When I talk about being in the woods or having, different areas in the yard, I said in a video recently that I have different areas in my yard. I have what I call the yard, and then I have an area that I call the woods, and an area I call the field. Well, this is the area that I call the woods, or at least this is one of the areas. It actually extends on around the other side of the house, and even in the front of the house. But this is one of the areas that we had cleaned out, and I really don't know what I want to do back here yet. I just hadn't decided. We still have some areas over that way that needs to be going toward the creek that need to be bush hogged because the underbrush is starting to grow up again. My husband will have to do that before the fall. Before the winter, excuse me. But you can see it's very wooded. And so, but I think it's so pretty back this way. Kind of makes me think of a park. And so I don't know. I hadn't figured out the plans for this area yet, but I would like to do something out here. We'll see. Maybe this winter I will, since I'll have more time to think about and plan things I want to do next year in the garden, the yards, I will maybe figure something out for this area. This is the area that I refer to that I'm referring to when I talk about the field. It used to be fenced in, and the people we bought the place from had horses back here, but the people before them, I reckon they had cattle, and the property at that time was much larger than it is now. And but I've started kind of an orchard out here. I have grapevines running up trellises, and a couple apple trees, and I planted a pear tree, which I'm fixing to walk out there and do a video, or not a video, but I'm fixing to walk out there and explain that tree to you, because this is something you really want to watch for when you go to buy trees, especially from like Tractor Supply or some of those kind of places. Okay, this tree right here, I'm going to have to back way up. I'm going to say this tree is probably, just a rough estimate, probably 15 to 17 foot tall. I planted this tree several years ago. What it was supposed to be is a pear tree, like a Bradford pear tree. Excuse me. It was supposed to be a Bartlett pear tree, because we have a pear tree back there, up on the hill, but it's really old, and it looks like it's trying to, fizzle out, and I have to fight the squirrels and raccoons and you name it to be able to get pears off of it nowadays. So I thought, well, I'll buy a new one and plant it a little closer to the house. Well, I picked this one up at Tractor Supply. And guess what it's turned out to be? It's turned out to be a Bradford pear. They grafted, it is a pear tree, a Bartlett pear tree, but it's also a Bradford pear. They grafted a Bartlett to a Bradford, and this is what we've ended up with. We're going to have to take this tree down. Out of this whole giant tree, this one limb, do you see this one limb? This one itty bitty limb that's growing out the side right there is the only part of this tree that is a Bartlett pear. Talk about frustrating. So, this is kind of a warning for, when you pick up trees from some places, garden center, like co-ops and that kind of thing, farm places. You want to really be careful and If I had have looked at that, and it was small when I bought it, I may or may not have noticed that it was, had been grafted onto something. We could leave that part of it, the part that produces the the Bartlett pear part. We could leave that and cut off the rest, but we would be continuously having a fight with the Bradford pear because if you've ever dealt with Bradford pears, they're invasive. They're terrible trees. They smell horrible. They smell like, if you've ever been near a river in the spring, like when the fish have spawned, it smells horrible. That's what the blooms, when a Bradford pear blooms, that's what it smells like. It smells like the river and fish. It's so horrible. When we bought this property, we had quite a few, and this what I call the pasture now, because this also got cleared out. Part of it did. It was full of them, completely full of them, because the little ornamental fruits that you see right here, the birds throw these little seeds and they drop off everywhere, and then they'll sprout up. And the trees that they produce have got major thorns on them. Like, they're huge and they look like part of the tree bark. And they're terrible. They're just terrible. And so you really want to make sure when you buy, especially a Bradford pear, and I'm sure this, could be a problem with other types of fruit trees where they're trying to graft them. And the tree, nowhere on the tag said that it was a grafted tree. And it honestly, it was just a couple of little sticks is what it looked like when I bought it. And so I kept waiting and waiting. It's kind of funny. I kept waiting and waiting for pears. And then finally, last year, it produced a few pears. And they were on that one branch. And I was like, oh my goodness. So anyways, this tree's most likely going to go because I don't want to mess with it. I'd rather get rid of it and plant, one that's not been grafted this way in its place. This is the east side of our property. You can see, we have a decent area on this side where I could landscape. It's going to be mostly shaded because, as you can see, we have some giant trees here. Which, again, we have, to landscape back here, I would have to be careful about where I planted things because the types of trees some of these are, if we have, high winds, like we've just had from, Hurricane Francine, you're going to spend the next couple of days picking up tree limbs. And so, I wouldn't want to plant things back here that I'm afraid is going to get crushed. Unless it's something that's going to, die to the ground in the wintertime and come back. Because then it really wouldn't make that big of a deal. But yeah, you can see there's lots of potential with, landscaping, on our property. It's just, oh my goodness, it's just, finding the time, money, and figuring out what you want to do because, depending on what side of the property you're on, depends on what you're limited to planting because, again, like I said, this is mostly shaded. Just like what I call the woods out there is, also mostly shaded. So, it's going to take some figuring out and planning, actually. Just sitting down and drawing it up and doing some research on what kind of plants I think I might want to, go with because You know, it's not like in a sunny area where you can just go to the garden center and pick up just about anything, you know, and make big flower beds. It's totally different, you know, when you've got tons of shade. And so this side of the house has tons of shade. The other side of the house, on the west side, actually is in full sun. So, uh, you know, I do have options with different, you know, different things depending on which sides of the house I plan on. But that's what makes gardening fun. You know, it's interesting. Uh, and so I just thought I would cover some of the property, you know, so you could kind of get a view of, you know, what I'm working with here. And so, and you would understand when I say the field or the woods or, you know, the east side, or, you know, you will kindly know what kind of light and that kind of thing that I'm going to be working with. And so until next time, bye.